Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I see some familiar faces of parents and a few staff members. Thank you for coming on and your patience for as we let folks in. We have about an hour devoted to this time this evening. And before we get started, I wanted to introduce our administrative team. Andrea Holt is our curriculum person, or AP. Chris Kleckner is our AP for Student Services, and James Hancock is our Assistant Principal for Activities. And there are a couple, you probably see some familiar faces of some other Dimond staff online with us this evening. So I wanted to first start with some highlights of what fourth quarter options are going to be, and give you a brief description of each one of those particular options. I want to remind everyone that
Why don't you come out here with me?
And this is a good reminder to just make sure you're muted. The Zoom link is set up so that you are muted already, but please make sure that you are. When I finish with the description, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. You can put it in the chat box as well as raising your hand. That's why I have the APs here to help us, as well as our AA, to help us navigate this and make sure that we don't have anything that we miss. So thank you, Melissa, for being here. All right, so as you recall, in the survey, I hope everyone has seen the email that was sent yesterday describing the survey. And then again today, we put it in the email. The first option is what we're currently doing, and that is Dimond in school face-to-face. Basically, that option, we would come into the building and your student would have the current teachers or the teachers for that fourth quarter, and there will be direct instruction. The second option would be ASD virtual. That is going to continue to be set up where the student is connected to Dimond High School, meaning that we will continue to provide support through our counseling department, with administration, our nurse, but they would not necessarily have a Dimond teacher with ASD virtual. ASD virtual has its own staffing. We help to allocate, or we help to staff ASD virtual, and students work pretty much independently. They have to be self-directed to navigate or work on learning through Apex and eDynamics. The teachers, now going into the fourth quarter, we've learned a lot about ASD virtual, and some things have changed since the beginning of ASD virtual. So there are office hours where students check in with their teacher, their online teacher, as well as there's a cyber center coordinator that checks in with them regularly to see how their pacing is going, how they're doing. So ASD virtual would be strictly online, self-directed, independent, and pretty much asynchronous. There's no schedule connected to that particular option, that program. The third option would be that you would opt to go to homeschool through ASD. Earlier, when I sent out that first email, there were 3 choices of charter school. Since then, information has been shared, or clarified rather, that Family Partnership and Frontier would not be taking new students for enrollment. So the only option for homeschool ASD would be Paideia. And Paideia would use online services like Apex with a little bit more contact with students, having them come to that location at various times for check-ins. And then we found out that we could have a fourth option, which is that other piece that's on the survey. And that option would be a Dimond online option, which would allow students to still stay connected to Dimond High School and stay connected to their teachers and to the staff. Since then, since we sent out this yesterday, today we found out some news that may impact our ability to offer that fourth choice. And the Dimond Online really depends on the Wednesday asynchronous day. So initially, the district's plan was to allow us to do that, to have that Wednesday as a way to support students who were in the online program. But now we are dependent on their decision to allow secondary to maintain that schedule, the current schedule, which would include an asynchronous Wednesday. And I want to stress that really now we're at a situation, how can we support students, stay connected to them if we don't have that Wednesday asynchronous day? Okay. But at this point, we still want, so the district still wants all of our families to still do the survey. And what we will do is we'll continue to work on a plan of how we can connect to students if we are able to do that, if we are able to go ahead and go forward with this Dimond Online plan. And so the district will take all of the results. Again, Friday is the day. We've been asking, can we see an update day to day? And for whatever reason, the district is saying, well, it's a format that we aren't able to push out, but we keep asking for that so we can at least have a general idea. Are we going to have 100? Are we going to have 300? What is that number going to look like? But ultimately, the results of the survey, the district will be able to make a decision whether or not we'll be able to have that Wednesday to help support this fourth option. Okay, so what we're going to do now, because I'm seeing a lot of questions going through the chat, and if we could have Melissa. I'm going to read it, so just make sure that I'm kind of going in order, okay? So we have a question from Jocelyn. Is there any way to arrange for a tour for students who have never been inside Dimond? My daughter didn't come from Mears and didn't have a chance to see the school last year. It would be nice if she knew where to go on the first day. Thank you. That's a great question. Today was kind of devoted, this evening was devoted to the options, but the plan is for March 15th. March 15th is when we'll have our freshmen come in for an orientation. And then on the 16th, we will bring everybody else in. It's my understanding that Mabry, our APs are answering these questions as we go through, so that's great. But there will be an opportunity if you have a student that is new to Dimond, and they are not a ninth grader, please let us know. You are definitely invited for that day. And when we share that information for students to come back, will you just come on in. We can do the tour, some of what the orientation that our government students and mentorship students do is really geared towards ninth graders. So whatever that portion is, they don't have to be there for that, but we can definitely get them a tour. We still have quite a few people waiting in the waiting room. Good question. How many people will be in a class? Ideally, we would like to have under our half capacity, which in some areas is 22. Some of our singleton classes are at 30. And right now, those classes are only taught by one individual because it's a singleton class, and we're trying to brainstorm or problem solve that situation with some schedule changing, maybe kids changing their schedule to take a different elective class. All right. Thank you, Andrea, for answering that. Yes, so with students that return to school, go to school Monday through Friday, yes, that is what the superintendent is wanting to do. And that's why we're now in this shift of changing from Wednesdays. We've been talking about this for months. Secondary assured us that we would be able to do that for various reasons. It's been helpful right now during this time, and particularly if we have had this option where kids could still be connected with us and stay with us with Canvas, with the Canvas assignments, but be able to check in with the teacher. So right now what we're hearing, and that this might come up at the school board meeting this evening, that the superintendent is intending for all students to come back with during Monday through Friday, no Wednesday asynchronous. Thank you, Chris. We've got that about the tour. How students will take classes at KCC. So thank you for that question. Right now, there is a proposal that it has gone to the superintendent from the principal of KCC. It is not public yet of what that is, but there is a plan for, tentatively, a plan for part-time students to go there, but they would not be able to do a face-to-face. It would be an online situation. And so we're waiting to find out about how they will deal with that. And if that is the case, yes, ASD will provide busing for that. All right, good question about kids leaving for spring break. And so in accordance with CDC and the state's regulation for that, if you are going to leave, and it's all during spring break, even if you leave during spring break, you want to consider, because we're going to start school on March 15th with everybody coming back on the 16th, that you must adhere to the quarantine. And that quarantine is 5 days quarantine with a negative test for planning purposes. So some people may be going on a trip. I know that some people are going to attempt to go on their trip the weekend before spring break and arrive back on a Tuesday. Well, if you count that, you have 5 days up until that Monday. If your kid is not a freshman, certainly you could still be in that window. But if you take all of that week of spring break, it will go into that next week, which would be your week to quarantine. How we will deal with that is we will need to know from the parent through our attendance process to let us know that your student is quarantined. It would be an excused absence, and they are allowed to make up anything that they miss. All right. Thank you, Mr. Wheelis is on, and there is already a tour, a video on our website. So please take a look at that. The student government put that together for all students. Okay, I think I answered that one. Yes, traveling, what I think we all need to keep in mind, not just spring break, but any traveling, whether or not you have a kid who is in a club hockey, or you have to leave for one of your kiddos' graduation. Some of our kids have older siblings. You will have to quarantine if you leave the state. The district adheres to that for their employees, and we will be adhering to that for our students as well. Someone asked the question, what is session A? I'm not quite sure what they mean there.
We have session A, session B, and session C for King Tech. Session A is the one that starts at 7 a.m. and there is no transportation provided for
For
session.
that one, because that is your part-time student, yes.
Or
Right.
students that drive themselves. Now, when students registered over the summer and the counselors put them in session A, we did make sure that everyone understood they would need to provide their own transportation to and from at that point.
Okay, good clarification. Thank you. Let's see, question here. My concern is there is zero support for kids that have to sit out for quarantine or exposure. Will teachers be available to Zoom? It is my understanding that that won't be available to us. That is why teachers will have things on Canvas to keep kids connected to the classroom. The teachers will be expected to keep their Canvas current. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I would agree with you that it is problematic, particularly for advanced as well as remedial classes. Regardless of the class, we want to be able to meet with them as much as possible, but that does not negate the opportunity for teachers to arrange times with students before school or after school on Zoom. And that Zoom would be a one-on-one situation to answer any questions. It wouldn't necessarily, it's not necessarily reteaching, going back over what was taught in the classroom, but definitely providing some support. I just want to ask, is it helpful that you can see the answer if our APs are answering the questions for you? Just want to, okay. It's helpful for her to do that? Okay, good. So we'll continue to do that. So for immersion students, I've already spoken to our department chair for immersion, and they are willing to accommodate as much as they can, the best way that they can, if your student chooses to not come back into the space. No, unfortunately, right now, I would say live streaming is not an option. There's some technical challenges with that. It kind of is just like Zooming, but we're looking at how we could connect with students by either broadcasting or recording, something like that. But I can't tell you definitively if that would be the case. But now what we're looking at with the fact that we don't, we're kind of in limbo, let's say that, uh, depending on the district and their final decision for that Wednesday asynchronous. And that's where I'm concerned of how can we meet the needs right now. We don't know what that need is, and that's why it's critical for people to take the survey. Once we get the survey, that would be substantial evidence that we can use to advocate and influence with secondary about the need. Okay, so let me see, where did I get to? I think I'm at Carrie's question. My son is a senior this year and having any activities for them besides graduation. Mr. Hancock is on with us, but I think I can't answer this fairly well, but you certainly can add if I miss anything. So far, we have been told that there is no gathering with those traditional activities. For example, no prom, no senior fun day. We were able to get the t-shirts out to our seniors. I think some still haven't picked them up, but we wanted to get that out to them. But those things that we're accustomed to doing, we are right now, we have been told that we are not able to do those things. With graduation, I know that you all, if you're online here, you are reading those emails. Dr. Bishop sent out an email yesterday, actually on Monday, that we are going to have face-to-face graduations. Now, that's what she's saying now, but things can change. And we've all experienced how quickly things change. They are having a little bit of difficulty finding a venue. They were hopeful that they could have it at AFS, and AFS is not available during that time. So we'll keep moving forward. They did tell us there would be a possibility of having it on our own home fields, which is exciting for any school to be able to do that, because it's never been done before. But we will continue to communicate any changes when it comes to graduation. All righty. I think I've answered that one. So what about lunch for kids? That too was mentioned in yesterday's email about that there is not a designated lunchtime. There is a designated break time in between second and third period for a snack. And if students want to, they may pick up at the very beginning of a day. The cafeteria has packaged for any kid that wants it, a breakfast, a snack, and a lunch that can be taken home if they wanted to. So if your student has a sporting event or sporting activity after school, there's an opportunity for them to get a snack then, and opportunity for them to get a snack going before they go into the practice. I would have the coaches look at how they can accommodate that in their mitigation plans. James, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, good. All right, so if a student becomes exposed or is COVID and has to quarantine, how will they make up the classwork? I think we mentioned this earlier. So you think of an absence pre-COVID. We kind of have to go back to what do we already have in place for kids who miss class. And so just like if they were sick for some other reason, or you had a trip where you missed school, they have the opportunity to make up that work. And also the teacher has the discretion to decide what is it that the student would turn in. And if they needed to make any other arrangements, the teacher would plan that with the student as well. Okay. So this question says, what is the policy or the policy for exposure to cover? What kind of rules will be in place if several students get cover at Dimond? So I think what you're asking is if there's a situation where classroom A is exposed, what we have to consider, first of all, the student who potentially may or be suspected of having COVID is not a confirmed case. So they would go out, quarantine, they would test. When we get that test back, which if it's a negative test, then yes, the entire class would need to quarantine. And yes, there is the potential for multiple classes depending on where that student has been, if they went to all 3 classes. So there is that possibility. But what I want folks to understand or know is the information that a parent gives us about the first time they see exposure, when you've been tested, every little bit of information is critical when we do our COVID report, so that the command crisis team can assess what the exposure is, who needs to quarantine, was it close contact, and what that return date. So dates are very critical so that it can be narrowed down to when that student is going to return. There's right now, there was talk about COVID testing at the sites. That was a few months ago. I haven't heard back if every school is going to have the capability to do that. Very good question. And of course, as soon as we know there are opportunities for that, we will let you know. What will teachers be putting on Canvas? So right now, many of these classes are already built. The Canvas shells are already built. They have ability to modify and adjust those as needed. Andrea, do you want to speak to that curriculum question? Any other insight you can provide?
Sure. So when the teachers got their Canvas shells for the first quarter, they were built out for the first 2 weeks by teams that worked all summer to do that. However, for the second half of the year, which is taking place during this current third quarter and also fourth quarter, 3 classes and 3 classes, everything that's in the teacher shells is loaded by the teachers themselves. So all assignments, I know they're putting supports in there that don't substitute for live instruction, but support their instruction with the kids, and they will continue to use Canvas as the primary platform for the sole reason, and I'm going to combine another question here, if that's all right, Tina.
Sure.
I don't remember who asked it, but somebody asked about, somebody said they have friends that have children in the Valley and the kids are frequently in school and out of school, and is that a possibility? So that is precisely why teachers will continue to use Canvas as their platform, is because that is unfortunately a real possibility that we will be in school and then we may not be in school and then we may be in school. So for that reason, the teacher is still going to be the primary means of instruction, but of course that Canvas platform will be invaluable in the event that we are unexpectedly shut down.
All right, thank you. So I do not know when the decision is going to be made about the Wednesday asynchronous day. We were told that hopefully this week before the end of the survey window closes. And yes, there's been talk about changing your mind. If you were in school and wanted to change back, how seamless that could be. We don't know exactly how seamless that could be, but definitely we have the ability to have some flexibility of, if you get into the space and you have second thoughts. We want to be able to be sensitive to the students' comfortability, because this is important to them. It's already a disruption to have to come to school and have your mind on COVID, right? Because it's not going to be, I want to stress that if you haven't already, share with your student what we added to yesterday's email about what it will look like. If you have not looked at the mitigation plan, please do that with your student, because we want to make sure that our kids have a clear understanding of not just their behavior, but what's going to be expected as we're in the space. It will not be like what they're accustomed to. Much of what high school is the socialness. They get to socializing, they get to see their friends. They're going to see their friends, but there is not going to be the opportunity to gather, quote unquote, hang out. Everybody is going to have to be diligent about their own behavior and how their behavior may impact others or an entire classroom. So I would encourage you to take some time to go over that with your students. So question is, why is it not feasible to offer that option to attend by Zoom live? What I think is hard for many of us to conceptualize is the ability to engage both platforms. And so when our teachers return face to face, the expectation is that they have that room and they're engaging with that group of kids. When we have them on Zoom, now the situation is more complex, of trying to provide what we would consider equal engagement, and that might be difficult. That's very difficult. So right now, there is no expectation for teachers to Zoom with students on a regular basis. Andrea or Chris, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I will build on that a little bit from a curriculum standpoint. Teachers put very different plans together when they are Zooming with their kids, which they've been doing. I just had a parent private message me and wanted to give a huge shout out to the teachers and the fabulous job that they're doing. So thank you to that parent for doing that. And I'm going to share that with good things at our staff meeting tomorrow morning. But the teachers plan specifically for Zoom and how that class is going to work and how the kids are going to be engaged and what the activities are going to be. And it takes a lot of time. I don't know that the general public really realizes how much time goes into planning each and every lesson that our teachers teach. So with that said, to ask our teachers to be planning these lessons every day for face-to-face, and then also say, and just take a few more hours and plan each of those 3 lessons for a Zoom model as well as the face-to-face model, is really stretching our human resources thinner than they can truly be stretched at this time. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is that I'm sure, as all of you know from having kids Zoom in your home, Zoom takes an incredible amount of bandwidth. And to have every staff member Zooming simultaneously in the building is really maxing out, if not over stressing, the technological resources. So it's a human resource issue as well as a technology issue, to have that be the expectation of every teacher every day for every class.
All right. Thank you. And that kind of goes into the next question of technology. Ms. Holt did answer this, but I do want to emphasize the district's plan to have one-to-one fourth quarter. So if your student does not have a device or a laptop, we will be providing them with a Chromebook. And the reason why we're doing this is to allow students during face-to-face to access Canvas, to follow along with those assignments or whatever those materials are, so that we're not exchanging paper. So we want to maintain that routine of accessing resources via Canvas and continuing to submit any assignments that are due through Canvas. All right. So the question keeps coming up. Yes, I understand there is some misunderstanding. CDC used to say 10 feet. Then they went from 10 to 6. And then the latest is 3 to 6. And then if you can't do 3 to 6, when you have a larger classroom, when if ever possible. And that is also in our mitigation plan. So we know there may be situations where we aren't able to, with fidelity, maintain 6 feet. But that's why masks are important. I believe someone asked the question, are we wearing masks? Yes, masks are required. They are required. We hope that our students will comply with this. If we have students that are not complying with this, then in-school face-to-face is not the place to be, because we really need to rely on every person doing that as much as possible. When we are not obviously drinking or eating something. And there's a way to do that where you're not taking your mask completely down, that you can still do that without removing it from your face. So there's a comment. Very concerned with no virtual option when students have to miss class. So there is that possibility, but this is where staying connected, whether it's through email or arranging a Zoom session with a teacher, is going to be critical, so that students are not falling behind. If it is that they're quarantining, if they're sick, that will be important, because I'm going to tell you, like Andrea, Ms. Holt just said, our teachers are doing an incredible job of teaching online, providing the service of extra time after class, even if it's just a couple of minutes on Wednesdays, doing that, and then even after school, connecting with students. And so I have no doubt that our teachers are not going to provide grace and flexibility. And I'm very proud to say that they are doing that. And going back in the space, they have compassion, knowing that some of our families won't feel comfortable. And we're trying to figure out, how can we meet that need? Because I know that they are providing that grace now. And that's not going to change as we move into the fourth quarter. Ms. Holt?
Yes, I just want to, I think I can wipe out, you're reading top to bottom and I'm working bottom up at this point. So I think I
Good.
can wipe out about 6 or 8 of the
Good.
comment slash questions on here.
There is one in the middle there about prom. So far, let me answer that question and then we can go to the next one. What we know is that we have to adhere to the municipal emergency orders. So if there is a change in that will allow us to have a prom, we don't know. We might get that opportunity. But as you know, things like that require a lot of planning. And here we are in February. We don't have venues for that. So it would be fairly difficult to change midstream on that. And so the school is adhering to municipal orders as well as state policy around gatherings. James, you have anything you want to add? I know you guys talk about these activities in your activities meeting.
Yeah, the instructions that we've been given is that we're not going to have senior fun day or prom at this time.
All right, so Ms. Holt, have we answered everything or do I need to go way on the bottom? I need to figure out where we are. You answered one of the questions about online again. Someone has asked the question about, I'm still confused about quarantine and the student getting instruction on assignments. Also, if a child is negative when they arrive to Anchorage, do they still have to quarantine? Yes. So I'll start with the bottom. Yes, you still need to quarantine for that amount of time. And if they do quarantine, how will they access their assignments? They will log into Canvas like they currently do now, and look at the date and keep up with that pacing of the date. If they have questions, reaching out to their teacher via email would be appropriate. And the reason why, even if they have a negative, we know that symptoms can come a little bit later. And so we need to be cautious. You know, you could have a negative test on the other end. You get on the plane, you might have been exposed. We don't know that. So that's why we adhere to that quarantine coming into the state. And let's see. Good question. Someone asks about the laptops, will there be access for charging them if needed? So that is something we also are working on as far as maybe charging stations, strips. We know that that's going to be an issue, and we're working on that to figure that out. And let's see. No, they will not lose their spot. So the question was about Japanese immersion. Will they lose their spot? No, that your student will not lose their spot in the immersion program. And we love the Japanese immersion program too. All right. The date for graduation, that is May 11th at 2 p.m. I memorized that, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. Good. And I don't foresee that changing. The only thing that would change would be how do we actually go about that graduation? As you know, the superintendent is on board with us having a face-to-face, and how we do that, we are quite there with that. All right. So good question. And that brings us to Mr. Kleckner to talk about changing of classes during the passing time. And if you could kind of give people a visual of what that would look like, I appreciate it.
Okay, everybody can, I'm off of mute, yes.
Yes.
So I'm Mr. Kleckner, the Student Services Principal. So as Ms. Johnson Harris has said, we're not going to be in the same setting as we were last January. It'll be pretty regimented. Students will have passing time between classes. The hallways have been have signage up that make them unidirectional. Many of them are one way. A few might be two-way, depending on what's at the end of it, if there's a way of going around or not. But most of them are one way. Students will have enough time in passing to be going around a circuitous route. So that will be built into it. When students are passing, they won't be eating. They are expected to keep their mask on at all times. The bathrooms will be closed so that we can control how many people go into a room so it does not end up having a big group of individuals taking their masks off. They will be allowed to use their bathrooms during class time. I believe there was one more that was in there about being able to bring your own food or drink. You are able to bring your own food or drink. But once again, there's times built in to eat, and it will not be tolerated if kids wandering around, I'm eating and my mask is off. The student will wear their mask, and they will have a point in time that they can eat. If I saw a student eating and they're lifting their mask up, taking a bite and put it back down, that's a different story. But using it as an excuse not to wear a mask, that's not going to happen. The only time that mask will be able to be taken off for a snack is in the period that's allotted for that time after second in the classroom while they're seated. Just to give a little 2 cents about what it's like when you're in the classroom, students will be in assigned seats. Their movement will be limited. The purpose of assigned seats, once again, is to limit their movement, but also for contact tracing. So that's an important thing. I don't think I can emphasize enough, and I think I want to be able to at least get 80 people out here knowing that school is not going to be that big social setting. It's going to be pretty regimented. Someone equated it to kind of like what it's like in the military academy, where you're uniform. There's a lot of uniform movement, and that's really what it's going to be like. There was a question about computers. Could I answer that as well? So Chromebooks, the school district is trying to go one-to-one with anybody that needs one. If you have your own computer, you're welcome to bring it. You need to make certain they bring a charger or have it charged ready for the day. Distribution will happen that first day at school. If you're in need of one right now, I ask that you call the front office, and I believe the proper number is, I don't want to give it for certain. It's 7019. So 742-7019 is Thelma's number. She's the one that will be able to help you with that. If by chance I'm wrong, it's 7009. Maybe Miss Parker can help me on that one.
The 7019 will work, and also 7000 will get you into the switchboard, and then you can choose from that as well.
So those two will be the important numbers. So give those a call, and she can set you up. She'll ask you a few questions, and they'll send it to you.
All right, thanks, Chris. So we have about 10 minutes, and go ahead, Ms. Holt. You're on mute.
Of course I am. Famous last words. I think I can answer about 6 or 7 of the questions that are still floating out there, because they all tended to say, can teachers do some live classes and some online classes, or can we just broadcast what they're saying? We are working on a solution for this that hopefully will encompass at least broadcasting what they're saying, even if there is not any interaction. The reason we can't have teachers teaching some classes and Zooming for other classes is because, say we have a teacher who teaches one section of this and two sections of that, and we don't have anywhere to send the students for the class that they could be Zooming. We're working on trying to get our class numbers down. So every teacher that we pull to do something, we have to find something to do with their kids. So I'm not meaning to shoot down anybody's ideas, but we are looking at every possible avenue that we can look at to find a solution for this. And, we're going to save the chat where this is all recorded. We'll have the ideas there, but I do want people to know that we are looking at some kind of a solution-oriented way to solve this puzzle. And I think that takes care of probably 7 or 8 of the questions that are yet to be answered.
Okay. All right, so there is a possibility that there could be a sudden school closure, and so you do need to be prepared as a family for that. Another reason why Canvas is very useful to be able to do that. Besides having exposure or a transmission, second transmission, just multiple cases, there's also another reason. In the event we are not able to staff our classrooms with substitutes, we would potentially have to have a closure, emergency closure as well. So you'll need to be prepared for that. And there is that possibility, let's see, and with no virtual, will the students risk the school year being extended? There is that possibility of extending the school year, because if there are emergency closure days, those have to be added on at the end. And Ms. Akhtuk, good to see you, Evelyn. She's asking about the ability to work on Canvas and do a hybrid. Right now, I would say on Canvas until we can finalize what that hybrid or what we call Dimond Online would look like. But there's still that ability to stay up to date and current on Canvas. Okay. I think we've addressed why they can't continue, why teachers are not going to be teaching through Zoom. We've already addressed that. And so I think many of these are already repeated. Melissa, can you take a look? I don't want to miss anybody's question, but I think that we've answered most of these, right? If not all of them, in various ways from the beginning and middle area. We have about 5 minutes left. I think we were able to get Jen back in. All right, going all the way down. Okay. I think there was a question about the test, the COVID test that's appropriate. And right now, I do not want to give out the wrong information, but Chris, can you go to, I know where to find it. Can you go straight to that COVID handbook and go ahead and read the test that the district takes? Because that's critical. We already had a situation where the test that the student took was not acceptable. So you could do that and we'll make sure to put this in our newsletter. We will put in there policy for quarantine for you, as well as the appropriate test, places where you can test with the district as well. We have some locations throughout the district where they're still, I believe they're still doing testing. You find it there. And as you're looking for that, I'm going to go down and just make sure we haven't missed anything.
Give me one moment. They reformatted the book, so.
I noticed that. That's why I said I'm not gonna mess with that. So I should have warned you that they changed the format on that.
So we do have a question about what happens if a teacher has to quarantine. How will that work for their other classes receiving in-person instruction?
Well, in-person instruction, we would get a substitute for that teacher. I'm going to preface it with, we do not have a lot of flexibility with the subs. We were told, here are your 6, and that is what we have to use. And so it's really, and so that sub, I'll give you an example. So that sub comes in and they are doing the face-to-face, whatever that plan is to support the students, Dimond Online, then they would know that so that they could address any concerns or needs or fulfill that same routine that the teacher would have. And so that's one of those things about having the emergency closure. If we don't have the staffing, if we have more than 6 people out, then it's going to be hard to function. And really what we're at a disadvantage is that timing of how we will be able to communicate that to the parents so that you have enough time and lead time to not come to school. So it's almost like an ice day or a snow day. And when that decision is made and how quickly we can get to transportation and get the message to you that there won't be school. So it's going to be a challenge, but we're going to do the very, very best that we can in getting the information to you in a timely manner. Okay, Mr. Kleckner.
Yes, so the acceptable test is a PCR test. It's a PCR SARS-CoV-2. So that's the typical one that you get from when you drive up at municipality or the school district sites. If you go to the school district website, you'll find out some pop-up sites if you need to go there. Kind of a rule of thumb, if they give you results back in like 45 to an hour, you took the wrong test. So.
All right, thank you. And yes, there's a question about if a teacher has to quarantine. Well, it depends on what resulted in that quarantine. So, if a teacher has not been with that class and they find and that person had to travel or whatever, they're quarantined. If you're talking about specifically close contact within the classroom, it would be the entire classroom. Yes, it would be the entire classroom. And again, I can't emphasize enough, the better that information and accuracy of movement of when things happened, where that kid was, in the family. It's a close contact for the student. If someone in your family's close contact, that doesn't necessarily mean that the school or the classroom is going to quarantine. And that's why those decisions are made based on that information, how accurate it is. All right, going down, we're almost there. Wow. We appreciate all of the gratitude. Thank you so much for recognizing our teachers that for 9 months, and soon will be the entire year since March of last year, this staff, the teachers have been doing an incredible job. I'm going to tell you that I've never seen anything like this year, and Dimond has the resilience of no other building that I have been at. And as you know, if you've been here with us for a while, you have some historical knowledge. We've been through some challenging times, but they have weathered the storm, and we continue to move forward, and we're hoping that we're providing the best experience based on the conditions that we're in for your student and for your families. That's all I can say about that. We get that it's a challenge. And when we do come back into the space in the fall of 21, some of the same things that we have been doing, such as Canvas, right? Staying current with that, using their devices, wearing masks, there still will be mitigation for us in the fall of the year. So we're not quite going to be out of the woods, even though there's vaccines, because we know that that's not completely foolproof. So I'm just asking all of you, pass the word, hang in there with us. We appreciate your support of the teachers and staying connected to the teachers, checking on your students' progress, asking questions, connecting with our counselors, and knowing when your student is having some difficulty, whether it's academics or emotional. We are here to help you. And we know this is a strenuous time on our students emotionally. And so if you see anything, just a little red flag or whatever it is, please, please, please reach out to us so that we can help you, so we can problem solve. There are other ways that we can help address. We don't want our kids to keep going down a path that's a struggle for them if we can prevent that, if we can change the course for them. All right, I think that's it. Melissa, there was a question about vaccination cards, and I'm assuming that's just with shots in general. Is that what that was about?
I think the question was, will vaccination cards be collected from students once they've been vaccinated for COVID?
Okay, so that's a very good question, and that has not been communicated to us yet. So as soon as we find out, how are we able to verify what the district's expectation will be for that? That information will be funneled through the nurse's office, and we'll get that to you as soon as we can. But yes, good thinking. We're not quite there, but I appreciate the question and the thought behind it. Thank you guys so much. We're about 4 minutes over. We appreciate you coming on. We've recorded this, and so we will upload it to our website.